Okay, so we want to factor completely the trinomial 3x squared minus 14xy minus 24y squared. So let's start with the 3x squared. If this trinomial is going to factor, and we won't know that until we try, but if it will factor, then there is only one way to break down 3x squared. 3x squared is 3x times x. So we know from multiplying binomials that we use the FOIL process, it's often called, but we multiply first term times first term, that's the F in FOIL. First term times first term, 3x times x makes 3x squared. We also know that the 24y squared, which is actually negative in this problem, would come from multiplying whatever goes in the last position in each set of parentheses. So I'm going to use what's sometimes called trial and error. I actually prefer guess and check. So I'm going to make an educated guess as to what should go in these blanks. Let's try 4 times 6 to get 24. So I know that in these positions here, I know that if I'm going to put a 4 and a 6, it has to go 4 with the 3. The reason for that is 6 and 3 have something in common. So it can't be a 6 in this position. So if this is going to work, then we would have a 4y here and 6y here. So let's see if we can make this work. Now remember, first outside, inside, last. That's the FOIL process, is the acronym that's used. So we would multiply first times first. Okay, that one's okay. That's 3x squared. We would multiply first times last. Those are the outside terms. 3x times 6y makes 18xy. We would multiply the inside terms together. That's the 4y times the x, which makes 4xy. And this is getting a little messy, but that makes 4xy. And then we would multiply last times last, which is 4y times 6y makes 24y squared. So if we can get our signs right to where it adds correctly the middle terms, the outside and the inside bits, if those add to make negative 14xy, we've got it made. So first off, we know because this is a negative 24y squared, one of these binomials has to have a plus and the other has to have a minus. So I put the plus and the minus in this way because the negative needs to be on the 18xy and 4xy needs to be a positive value so that when we add them together, negative 18xy plus positive 4xy does make the negative 14xy, which was the middle term in our original problem. That also makes the negative 24y squared when we multiply, since a positive 4y times a negative 6y makes negative 24y squared. So that is the guess and check method to factor this problem. Now, there is another option here. Here is our second option for factoring this trinomial. Some people call this the AC method. It actually involves factoring by grouping. So first what we do is we multiply the coefficient of our first term times the coefficient of our last term. So that means we have 3 times negative 24. Then on scratch paper, 3 times negative 24 makes negative 72. And I am looking for two numbers which will multiply to make negative 72, and I want those same two numbers to add to make the coefficient of our middle term in the trinomial, which was negative 14. So negative 72, there are several ways that you can multiply to make 72. So let's forget about the negative for a moment, because multiplying and getting a negative result just means that the signs of our original numbers had to be different. In other words, one positive and one negative. So let's see what we can do here. Well, let's just start at the beginning. The ways you can multiply to make 72. We could have 1 times 72, 2 times 36, 3 times 24, 4 times 18, 5 does not divide into 72, 6 does, 6 times 12. Okay, but we can actually stop here. We could keep going, 8 times 9, and that is the end of it. But we're looking for two numbers whose signs are different. So, and since we want to add to make a negative 14, that means that we're going to be using 4 and 18. So the 4 would be a positive 4, and 18 would be negative here to make this work. So 4 plus negative 18 makes negative 14, and 4 times negative 18 makes negative 72. So at this point, what we want to do is use these two numbers to break up the middle term into two pieces. So 3x squared, so instead of writing negative 14xy, we're going to use these two numbers to break apart the negative 14xy. So I like to put the negative first. So negative 18xy plus positive 4xy is equivalent to our negative 14xy that we started with, and then just copy down the next term, the negative 24y squared. Now we can use the method of factoring by grouping to factor this expression. So we now have 3x squared minus 18xy, and if you recall factoring by grouping, we look at the first two terms and the last two terms of our 4-term long polynomial as separate problems. So what's in common to 3x squared minus 18xy? That's what we need to figure out. Well, there is a common factor of 3x. So we factor out 3x, and we're left with x minus 6y. And then we come to our plus sign. So we copy down our plus sign from the previous step. And what is in common to the two terms, 4xy minus 24y squared? Well, in common we have 4y. And that would leave x minus 6y. So if you recall from previous classes, factor by grouping has worked whenever what's inside the parentheses is exactly the same in both places. So that makes that in common now. So x minus 6y is the same in both places, so it is now a common factor. So our final answer here would be x minus 6y times what's left when we pull that x minus 6y that's in common out to the front. Well, what's left is 3x plus 4y. And this is the same answer that we got using the guess and check method. So hope that helps. Please ask more questions whenever you have them.